a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about war and peace in New Europe. You see, America is retreating and Europe is clearly in panic mode. France has offered its nuclear umbrella to shield Europe from external threats. Germany's new leadership seems to be pushing for European independence from US security guarantees. The question is, will the American security guarantees for Ukraine end once a peace deal is signed? We tell you where America stands, and we unpack all of this for you in just a bit. Here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. As Israel provokes Syria, is the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu searching for another conflict zone? We tell you what's brewing. Will Britain go bankrupt as the Bank of England totters? We tell you what's happening and why it's concerning. All this and more coming up. The European war ended with the nuclear devastation of Japan. The Cold War terrified the post-war generation with the threat of nuclear havoc. And 33 years after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Europe has been taught a severe lesson. Its long-standing dependence on the US for protection is no longer a certainty. In fact, Washington has made it clear. It does not want to shoulder the burden of Europe's security forever, and that message has been received loud and clear. Now, 80 years after the end of the Second World War, the strategic and physical map of Europe seems to be changing. And it appears that Trump and the Russian President Vladimir Putin have come to a deal, and the continent is now rethinking its entire security framework. France has now stepped forward, offering its nuclear umbrella to shield Europe from external threats. French warplanes armed with nuclear weapons could soon be stationed in Germany, signaling a whole new era in European defense strategy, as the United States, under Donald Trump, threatens to pull its military presence from the continent. Meanwhile, Germany's new leadership seems to be pushing for European independence from American security guarantees. The man who is expected to be Germany's next chancellor after his recent election victory is calling on Britain and France to extend their nuclear protection to the rest of Europe. Quite significant. Also adding that the continent can no longer afford to rely on Washington and should act independently. Meanwhile, at the White House, French President Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump marked the third anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war. Standing side by side, Trump and Macron delivered starkly different messages. Trump implied that US security guarantees for Ukraine could end once a peace deal is signed.
Yeah, European troops may go into Ukraine as peacemakers. So when the agreement is done, they can watch that everything is followed properly. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Trump further said that Putin would accept an arrangement of European troops in Ukraine, revealing that he had personally asked the Russian leader about it. Meanwhile, Macron insisted that any peace agreement must not come at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty.
Peace cannot mean capitulation by Ukraine, that peace cannot be a ceasefire with no guarantees, that peace must include the conditions for Ukrainian sovereignty. We need to assume our responsibilities to maintain security and stability for Ukraine and for the whole region in the long term. And for we Europeans, that's an existential question.
In fact, Macron also echoed Trump's statement that a ceasefire in the Russia-Ukraine war could be reached, quote-unquote, within weeks. And in a televised address, Putin said that he would not rule out European countries playing a role in a potential peace settlement. Meanwhile, the division between the US and Europe is further growing. The US, in fact, voted against a United Nations resolution backed by most of Europe, demanding Russia's withdrawal from Ukraine and condemning the war. It reportedly marks the first time that the US voted in alignment with Russia since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. You see, the message from the White House was perhaps unmistakable. America's priorities are shifting, and Europe must fend for itself. For decades now, Europe has relied on America's nuclear deterrence, with around 100 US nuclear warheads stationed at military bases across the continent, including in Germany. France and Britain, however, have maintained their own independent nuclear forces. Macron has recently been pushing for Europe to take greater responsibility for its own defense, and now Germany seems to be ready to listen. Like we said, Friedrich Merz is reportedly calling for serious discussions about whether France and Britain's nuclear shields could be extended to Germany and beyond. Merz, who is poised to become the next German chancellor, reportedly warned that under the Trump leadership, the United States has become indifferent to Europe's fate. France's nuclear arsenal reportedly consists of around 300 warheads, capable of being launched from submarines and fighter jets. Britain's Trident nuclear program, meanwhile, relies on 4 Vanguard-class submarines, each armed with up to 16 nuclear missiles. But behind these diplomatic maneuvers lies another high-stakes economic game. Ukraine and the United States are finalizing a landmark deal that would grant Washington a share of Kiev's revenues from natural resources. And Trump said that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky could visit the White House soon to sign the agreement, which, by the way, has become a major point of contention between the two leaders. Ukraine's Deputy Prime Minister posted on the platform X, stating that negotiations are in the final stages, with nearly all the key details resolved. However, this deal reportedly does not include the security guarantees that Ukraine had hoped for. As US and Ukrainian officials iron out or figure out the final terms, Moscow has also made a counter offer to Washington, suggesting that there is money to be made from closer ties with Russia as well. In an interview on Russian state television, Vladimir Putin invited American businesses to invest in Russia's natural resource sector.
Rare earth metals is a very important component, very important resources for modern sectors of the economy, and we are not doing much in this direction yet. We must do more. We would also be ready to offer our American partners, when I say partners, I mean not only administrative government structures, but also companies, if they showed interest in working together.
Russia's pitch, in fact, comes at a time when the global rare earth market is under intense pressure. Ukraine reportedly controls around 5% of the world's critical raw materials, including substantial reserves of graphite, lithium, and titanium, resources vital for military technology, electronics, and renewable energy. But Russia also holds vast mineral wealth. And as the US tries to reportedly reduce its dependence on China, which dominates the rare earth market, the battle for control over these resources is intensifying. So where does all of this leave Europe? France is stepping up as a nuclear power, it seems. Germany is demanding independence from the US in a way, and Ukraine is being pulled in pretty much all directions by economic and military interests, apart from others. With global alliances shifting, one thing is clear at this point: the decisions made will shape the fate of Europe for years to come. Once the world's dominant economic power, the UK has seen its financial influence wane over the decades. In the pre-World War II era, Britain controlled vast global trade networks, backed by the strength of sterling, which served as the world's primary reserve currency. However, the economic costs of the world wars, the loss of its empire, and shifting global dynamics gradually eroded its dominance, and now cracks have started to appear in its import war chest. And today, the UK economy faces a complex set of challenges, from high debt levels and slowing growth to geopolitical uncertainties. The country's debt to GDP ratio now nears 100%, up from 45% before the 2008 financial crisis. And with bond markets showing signs of strain and the foreign exchange reserves under question, the UK must navigate an increasingly uncertain economic landscape. And one of the biggest warning signs for the UK economy is the rising cost of borrowing. You see, the UK borrows money by issuing long-term government bonds. Investors buy these bonds, and in return, the government promises to pay them interest over time. And the yield, or the interest rate the government must pay, indicates how much investors ask for investing in them. The yields have been rising, by the way, meaning investors demand a higher return for investing in these bonds. The 10-year yield jumped from 3.9% in September 2024 to 4.9% in January 2025. And this is happening even as interest rates are being cut, a sign that markets are uncertain about the UK's fiscal future. Adding to the concerns, the UK government borrowed $22.5 billion in December, 25% more than expected. Meanwhile, foreign exchange reserves have fallen to $112.5 billion, well below their 2019 peak, of $147.5 billion. And these numbers basically suggest that Britain's financial position is becoming increasingly fragile, making it harder for the government to fund new projects or respond to economic shocks. Beyond financial markets, the UK is facing mounting geopolitical pressure, or what is being called the Trump effect. Sterling has weakened significantly against the surging dollar this year on Trump's tariff rhetoric. We've been telling you about that. And this comes even as Britain is trying to rebuild trade ties with the European Union. However, the country faces tough choices between aligning with the US or strengthening EU relations. And while Prime Minister Keir Starmer is set to visit Washington for Ukraine peace talks, the economic pressures will also be on his agenda clearly. At the same time, markets are questioning whether the UK economy can actually grow fast enough to keep up with the rising debt. The government's latest budget in October 2024 failed to raise long-term investment expectations, leaving investors worried about Britain's ability to sustain economic momentum. With public debt climbing, borrowing costs rising, forex reserves dwindling, economic forecasts under scrutiny, the UK now faces a crucial turning point. The question is, will policymakers make tough financial decisions to restore confidence? Or will Britain's economic challenges deepen further? The coming months will be critical for shaping the country's financial future, and we will be closely monitoring the developments. Let's now talk about the handshake diplomacy between Trump and Macron. What's that all about? You see, on Monday, Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron met in Washington, D.C. to discuss a possible end to the Russia-Ukraine war. However, it wasn't just their meeting that captured our attention. It was their seemingly awkward handshake that made headlines. Have a look for yourself. White-knuckled grips, knee slaps, and one handshake lasting several seconds. Trump and Macron's so-called death clasp handshakes have gone viral. During their first meeting outside the White House for a press conference on Monday afternoon, the leaders held on to each other reportedly for 12 seconds as they posed for photos. And now have a look at this encounter that happened inside Trump's Oval Office, where the American president placed his hand on Macron's leg, resulting in Macron turning the physical contact into another handshake.
So we were at the Eiffel Tower having dinner with your wonderful wife and with my wonderful wife, and we came out and he started speaking the French deal. And we didn't have an interpreter, and he was going on and on and on, and I was just nodding, yes, yes, yes. And he really sold me out, because I got back the next day and I read the papers. I said, that's not what we said. He's a smart customer, I will tell you that. Sure. Exactly what we agreed.
And sitting next to the French president, Trump mentioned that their Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, would visit the White House this week or next to finalize a deal regarding the war-torn country's natural resources. And then came the third, seemingly uncomfortable handshake of the day. During a news conference, it appeared as though Trump oddly twisted Macron's arm before they locked fists and faced the audience. Awkward or not, the apparent camaraderie between the two leaders was evident, as they both agreed for a ceasefire to end the Ukraine war. Macron had arrived in Washington, by the way, with a clear mission. Number one, to preserve and relaunch the personal relationship he formed with Trump during their first term in office. Number two, to reinvigorate the transatlantic alliance, which according to Europe had weakened due to the Trump administration's reality check on European matters. In this regard, it's safe to say that Macron seems to have already scored a point by being the first European head of state to visit Trump since his election. Macron successfully got his foot in the door, and as both leaders reaffirmed their commitment to ending the war in Ukraine, Trump also stressed that Europe must take on a greater role in ensuring Ukraine's long-term security, noting Macron's agreement on this issue. Listen in.
It's time to end this bloodletting and restore peace, and I think we're going to do it. We've had some great conversations, including with Russia.
Meanwhile, Macron acknowledged the shift in U.S. leadership as a key opportunity to re-engage with Russia. Listen to this as well.
Have discussion. I think it's useful to have negotiation. I think it's super important to go to the peace. But my strong point was to say, let's try to get something first which can be assessed, checked and verified. And let's be sure that we build sufficient guarantees on the short run. And this is where we are ready to be engaged. As for France, a lot of my European colleagues are ready to be engaged. But we do need this American backup, because this is part of the credibility of the security guarantees. And this is our collective deterrence capacity.
Trump concluded by expressing confidence that a peace deal is within reach, calling it the big one among ongoing diplomatic efforts. All in all, the handshake diplomacy seemed to have worked. But will it translate into actual difference is the question. The coming days will tell us. Let's now talk about what Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is up to. He's searching for a third conflict zone, is the question being raised. And the reason why that's being asked is because the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has demanded the complete demilitarization of much of southern Syria. In fact, it's an announcement that could potentially make conflict between Israel and the new leadership in Syria more likely. Netanyahu's warning comes after former President Bashar al-Assad's regime was already toppled in December last year, remember? And in a speech to Israeli military cadets on Sunday, Netanyahu warned basically that Israel would not allow the forces of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, nor the new Syrian army to enter the area south of Damascus. Listen in.
We will not allow forces of the HTS or the new Syrian army to enter the territory south of Damascus. We demand full demilitarization of southern Syria in the provinces of Quneitra, Dara, and Sueda from the new regime's forces. In addition, we will not tolerate any threat to the Druze sect in southern Syria.
Now, just for context here, former Al-Qaeda affiliate HTS took control of Damascus on the 8th of December in a stunning offensive. The offensive had ended the then President Bashar al-Assad's rule, as you would know by now, prompting Israel to move forces into a UN-monitored demilitarized zone within Syria. Now, Netanyahu has said that Israeli forces will keep its positions there as a defensive measure and for as long as necessary. And this is a change in Israel's strategy. Just days after Bashar al-Assad was ousted in December, Israel invaded border villages in Syria, remember. But the Israeli raids continued throughout January and into February. And this has raised fears among Syrians that the Israeli incursions could become a prolonged military occupation. The Israeli troops, in fact, have been targeting villages, particularly ones with military outposts. And the Israel military raids have terrified the villagers who, like other Syrians, had celebrated the ouster of Bashar al-Assad. And now celebrations in this part of Syria have quickly dissipated into fear of an encroaching foreign army. Until now, Israel had described its move into the UN-monitored demilitarized buffer zone in Golan Heights as a temporary measure. In fact, Israel had justified its stand, saying it is to ensure the security of Israelis on the other side. The apparent rationale was the prevention of extremist groups from moving down to the Golan. But with his latest comments, Netanyahu has made it clear that he believes that the new authorities in Syria could represent a whole new danger. Remember, Israel seized most of the Golan from Syria during the 1967 West Asia War and later annexed. The move was not recognized internationally, although the US did so in 2019. And now Syria's new interim president and HTS leader, Ahmad al-Shara, tried to reassure Israel that he does not want conflict. Al-Shara has said that he is ready to uphold the long-standing disengagement agreement between the two countries, concluded after another war in 1973. He also stressed that he will not allow Syria to be used as a base for attacks against Israel. But al-Shara has also called on Israel to withdraw from the buffer zone it has taken as he tries to assert sovereignty across the whole of Syria's fractured landscape. Clearly, Netanyahu does not care about it, it seems. According to Etana, which is a Syrian reporting and analysis organization, Israeli forces continue to conduct cross-border incursions into Syria with bulldozers and armored vehicles. Israeli forces have also reportedly raided former Syrian army bases in the southern provinces of Quneitra and Dara. What this suggests, according to experts, is that Israel may be expanding and entrenching its occupation. Already, Israel's incursions and taking off the buffer zone in the Golan Heights violates the 1974 agreement between the two countries. And now the Israeli incursions have also been condemned internationally. In January, the United Nations said, and I'm quoting now, Syria's sovereignty, territorial unity and integrity must be fully restored. And in December, the United Nations Special Envoy for Syria called on Israel to halt its very troubling military attacks. Even al-Shara has criticized Israel for its incursions, saying that it was a violation of the 1974 armistice agreement. From the perspective of the new Syrian leadership, freeing the country from the influence of all the foreign powers that jockeyed for position during the long years of the civil war is vital to ensure a more positive future for the country. But now Israel may present a more immediate challenge to Syria's new leadership, with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu provoking Syria in a way with his statements and military actions. Is Netanyahu searching for another conflict zone? Let's now tell you what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. $1.5 billion stolen in a single crypto heist. We tell you who was behind it and how the heist was executed. As China joins the space race for moon minerals and NASA rushes to mine the moon, we tell you all about the hidden dangers involved. Iran has taken yet another major step in its military expansion. The country has officially introduced the Yak-130 advanced fighter jets into active service, marking its combat debut in the large-scale Zulfikar 1403 military exercises. These drills, held along Iran's southern coastline and extending into parts of the Indian Ocean, demonstrated the Yak-130's combat effectiveness for the first time. The Islamic Republic of Iran Air Force deployed this aircraft in a real-time combat scenario to assess its air capabilities. And according to reports during the exercise, the Yak-130 flew alongside two MiG-29 fighter jets to locate and destroy a target drone. The MiG-29 pilots reportedly intercepted the drone, and the Yak-130, armed with advanced missiles, took it down. Originally developed by Russia, the Yak-130 has reportedly become a part of Iran's air fleet. Iran acquired this aircraft in August 2023, stationing it at the 8th Fighter Base in Isfahan. While its primary role is to train pilots on fourth-generation fighters, it also has major attack capabilities, adding to Iran's strike power. This jet reportedly has a radar system that can track up to 8 targets simultaneously. It is equipped with a variety of weapons, including precision-guided bombs and air-to-air missiles. Iran's decision to integrate the Yak-130 into active service is reportedly part of a broader strategy to modernize its air force. The country still operates a mix of aging Soviet-era and US-made aircraft, many of which date back to before the 1979 revolution. You see, the Zulfikar 1403 exercises did not just showcase Iran's air power. Iran's Navy also made headlines with a major development. The country has upgraded its hovercraft fleet, equipping these amphibious vessels with long-range missiles. And according to reports, Iran's domestically developed Piruzan-class hovercraft will soon enter operational service. These hovercraft, designed for rapid coastal defense and attack missions, reportedly successfully conducted live-fire tests during the maneuvers. Iran's military buildup does not stop there. Since the start of the year, the country has aggressively expanded its arsenal, preparing for potential conflicts with the United States, Israel, and other regional rivals. With its allies like Hamas and Hezbollah facing their own set of challenges, Iran appears determined to reinforce its military strength. And one of the biggest additions to Iran's drone fleet is the Gaza drone. Named after the war-torn Palestinian enclave, this massive unmanned aircraft can carry up to 12 bombs, significantly enhancing Iran's long-range strike capabilities. And Iran has also introduced a new electronic warfare vessel, by the way, the Zagros. Unlike traditional warships, this ship basically specializes in cyber surveillance and electronic intelligence, adding a whole new layer to Iran's military strategy. The country has further expanded its drone arsenal with the Rezvan drone, a suicide drone designed for precision strikes. And earlier this month, Iran's first ever drone carrier joined the Revolutionary Guards fleet, the Shahid Beheshti, a converted container vessel, now features a runway and can launch drones and helicopters, making it a formidable addition to Iran's naval forces. Iran has also recently unveiled 3 new underground missile facilities, signaling its intent to keep critical assets hidden and protected from enemy attacks. This underground strategy reportedly ensures that Iran's military remains functional even in the event of a large-scale assault. And with these latest advancements, Iran is making it absolutely clear it is determined to enhance its military power regardless of potential confrontations. The country is steadily building a more modern and more lethal arsenal. Shifting focus for now, Malaysian Airlines flight MH370's disappearance remains one of aviation's greatest mysteries. And now, almost 11 years after a British company was launched, what is likely to be the final stage, the final search for the doomed aircraft, our next report taking a look at the new area and the past efforts to find the missing plane.
The disappearance of the MH370 flight has remained a mystery. The search for the missing flight has once again resumed. The Malaysian government announced a renewed search aiming to solve one of aviation's most haunting enigmas. The company says that the operation will adhere to a no-find, no-fee agreement, with Malaysia paying $70 million only if the plane is located. A contract has been signed to cover an 18-month period, and the firm would receive $70 million if wreckage found was substantive. The Boeing 777 vanished on March 8, 2014, during a routine flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, carrying 239 passengers and crew. Malaysian military radar lost contact with the plane over the Andaman Sea. MH370's last transmission was about 40 minutes after it took off from Kuala Lumpur. Fresh operation is spearheaded by maritime exploration firm Ocean Infinity. This private company previously undertook an unsuccessful search in 2018, following a massive 3-year Australia-led mission that was suspended in 2017. Armed with advanced technology and the latest data analysis, Ocean Infinity plans to scour a 15,000 square kilometer area in the southern Indian Ocean. The last-ditch attempt to find the wreckage is in a new search zone in the Indian Ocean, on 300 kilometers off the coast of Perth, Australia. Despite exhaustive efforts, its final resting place remains unknown. Debris, some confirmed and some believed to be from the aircraft, has washed up along the coast of Africa and on islands in the Indian Ocean. The plane's disappearance has sparked countless theories, from pilot error to sabotage, but no definitive answers. Debris recovered from the Indian Ocean offered scant clues, leaving families in limbo. This new search represents not only a technical challenge, but also a moral obligation to uncover the truth behind MH370's fate.
Switching focus for now, Taiwan's Coast Guard detained a China-linked cargo ship after a nearby undersea cable to the Penghu Islands in the sensitive Taiwan Strait was disconnected. In fact, Taipei was alarmed after a Chinese-linked ship was suspected of damaging another cable earlier this year, prompting the Navy and other agencies to step up efforts to protect the undersea communication links. Now, these links are vital to the island's connections to the rest of the world, just to put it simply. And the Coast Guard has said it dispatched 3 vessels to detain the Chinese-crewed Hong Tai 58, registered in Togo, which dropped anchor near the sea cable off the southwestern coast of Taiwan. The Taiwanese Coast Guard said the vessel is a Chinese-linked ship carrying a flag of convenience, which basically means it is registered to a country other than that of its owner. A senior Taiwan official says the government is treating this case as a national security matter. Taiwan's defense ministry, meanwhile, says China is using its patrolling in the Taiwan Strait as an excuse to intimidate its sovereignty.
China are using the passing of aircraft and ships in the Taiwan Strait by allied countries as an excuse to conduct their joint combat readiness patrol, and that doesn't make sense to us. In other words, from the situation in the Taiwan Strait, we can see that the patrol is a move designated to intimidate Taiwan and regional countries. They have their own political agenda. They are only using the passing of aircraft and ships by other countries as an excuse. We don't think that's the real reason.
China responded to the matter, saying it is not aware of any disconnection of an undersea cable in the sensitive Taiwan Strait.
I am not aware of the relevant situation you mentioned, and this is also not a diplomatic issue.
Remember, Taiwan, which China claims as its own territory, has repeatedly complained about grey zone Chinese activities around the island. Taiwan says activities like balloon overflights and sand dredging are designed to pressure it without direct confrontation. Shifting focus to Sudan now. On the 23rd of February, Sudan's army said in a statement that it regained control over the city of El Getenna after destroying units of the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, and opened the road to the city of El Obeid. This comes on the back of a political charter being signed in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi, a move that could very well determine Sudan's future. As per the BBC, the US aid cuts by the Trump administration have forced the closure of almost 80% of emergency food kitchens set up across the country, something that has left hundreds of thousands famished, reportedly. Let's start with the latest from on the ground. In a video released by the Sudanese Armed Forces on Monday, people can be seen celebrating in the streets of the city of El Obeid to the west, as army members arrived in the city. Just last week, 3 days of RSF attacks had left more than 200 dead near Getena in White Nile State, which has emerged as a key battleground, by the way, as the army regains territory in central Sudan. Meanwhile, Sudan's army-aligned administration lashed out at what it called Kenya's irresponsible and hostile support for efforts by Khartoum's paramilitary rivals to form a parallel government. At a press conference in Cairo, Sudanese foreign minister said that Sudan will not accept any recognition of a parallel government. All of these developments come just a day after the RSF and a coalition of political and armed groups signed a charter to form a rival administration in the rebel-held areas.
No one will recognize the so-called parallel government of Sudan. This is a clear and confirmed position, and it was affirmed to us by His Excellency, the Minister, Egypt's Foreign Minister Badr Abdelati. We will not accept any other country recognizing a so-called parallel government.
In a post on X, Kenya's foreign minister called the charter a peace agreement and said that the proposed administration would restore democratic governance in Sudan. However, the United Nations warned that the signing of the charter would only increase the fragmentation of the war-torn country. As per the BBC, the freezing of the US humanitarian assistance due to Trump's executive order for 90 days meant more than 1,100 communal kitchens had shut, which had sprung up on an emergency basis to address the food crisis in the neighborhoods. And the closure of these kitchens is said to have impacted nearly 2 million people, forcing them to go hungry for days on end and face famine-like conditions reported in at least 5 locations. In fact, in 2024, the United States was the largest single donor to Sudan, both in direct donations and in contributions to the UN Sudan Humanitarian Response Plan, with the US ambassador to the UN announcing nearly $203 million in additional humanitarian assistance to Sudan in July 2024. Our next story is from North Korea, where hackers have done something unprecedented, reportedly. It's a real-world mega crypto heist. As per security experts, they have pulled off the largest cryptocurrency theft on record, stealing $1.5 billion from the digital asset exchange Bybit, which describes itself as the world's second largest cryptocurrency exchange with over 40 million users. And what's really mind-boggling is the fact that the theft of such a scale was pulled off in a single heist, and that too in a matter of minutes. It all started on Friday, where North Korean hackers reportedly stole an amount that equals a significant portion of North Korea's annual GDP. And over the weekend, they were reportedly already laundering about $160 million of the stolen funds through a series of accounts connected to North Korean operatives. As per crypto tracing firm TRM Labs, the firm also noted that in a single hack, the North Korean hackers have nearly doubled the amount they stole in crypto last year. The firm also said that it was able to tag and monitor the movement of the stolen Ethereum tokens worth $1.5 billion in real time. However, its claims have reportedly not been independently verified by law enforcement agencies, including the FBI. Meanwhile, in a statement, the Bybit CEO has told users that the firm is solvent and can cover the loss of $1.5 billion while promising to do everything possible to address the hack. Not just that, Bybit would reportedly give 10% of any recovered funds to security experts who played a role in retrieving the stolen money. All said and done, the scale of the heist is absolutely concerning. But this is not new. In December 2023, US and Japanese authorities issued a joint statement blaming North Korean state-sponsored hackers for the $308 million theft from a Japanese crypto firm. In fact, a White House official in 2023 said that about half of North Korea's missile program has been funded by such digital heists. The 21st century lunar gold rush has started with unprecedented urgency as superpowers are vying for the moon's untapped treasures. What was once science fiction is now the front line of geopolitical competition with billions at stake and national prestige on the line. Are we witnessing the birth of an extraterrestrial mining industry that could perhaps transform our future in space? Take a look.
The moon, a silent witness to Earth's history, has always been a symbol of mystery and wonder. Poets dream of its glow, lovers whisper under its light, and astronomers map its craters. But now, the moon is more than a celestial marvel, it is a frontier of untapped wealth. Beneath the moon dust lies the future of space exploration. Mining the moon isn't just science fiction. NASA is readying plans to mine the lunar surface for valuable minerals, crushed rock for construction. The rovers are also designed to excavate ice that could be used for rocket fuel or even by future astronauts to quench their thirst. By 2032, the US plans to start large-scale lunar excavation. To make lunar mining a reality, NASA is developing an army of autonomous robots. The Cadre rovers, small solar-powered explorers, will map the moon's surface and scan for buried resources. Working together, these robots will collect data and transmit it back to Earth. Later this year, a trio of Cadre rovers will launch aboard a commercial spacecraft. The US is not alone in the effort to drill the moon. China's lunar rover found a new mineral. It's not wasting any time. The country's National Space Administration plans to deploy 3 moon orbiters in the next 10 years to potentially mine more of this lunar mineral. Clearly, the race is on for supremacy over Earth's only natural satellite. But will there be collaboration or conflict for Moon's riches?
And the battle for the contested Arctic region is only heating up. Canada is boosting its northern troops near the Arctic Circle. Ottawa says the region is fast becoming a national priority, in fact. Canadian armed forces are conducting defense and sovereignty-related operations in the Arctic under Operation Nanook Nanolevot, which means the land that is ours. The Canadian armed forces saying that all eyes are on the untapped region today. Moving military resources around the area is complex work, and that is carried out by Twin Otters, a strategic transport aircraft that can basically operate in rugged environments. The Canadian forces have equipment designed to filter salt water from ice floes and tents made for temperatures of minus 50 degrees Celsius and huge hangars, house planes capable of landing on frozen lakes as well.
Everything points to the importance of the North and the Arctic, which is becoming a contested environment, not necessarily in a direct military way, but in terms of availability, navigation, ease of sailing.
States with territory and territorial waters within the Arctic Circle, Norway, Russia, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, US, Canada, Denmark, The battle for the region is due to various factors. One of the reasons is its untapped natural oil reserves. The US Geological Survey says the region may contain 160 billion barrels of oil and 30% of the planet's undiscovered natural gas. And with the current current pace of climate change and global warming, the ice caps are melting at a rapid pace, and this has only made the drilling easier. Countries near the Arctic Circle are eyeing this vast pool of resources. During the final days of Joe Biden's administration, Washington warned that China, which is not an Arctic power, sees the area as a new crossroads of the world. And Russia is also not behind in the race for the Arctic. In 2022, the Russian oil company named Rosneft announced the discovery of a massive 82 million ton oil deposit in the southeastern Barents Sea. A year later, Norway introduced a record number of Arctic oil and gas exploration blocks. Oil giants are currently exploring over 300 sites across the Arctic, and these firms include Russia's Gazprom, also France's Total Energies, among others. Canada has responded by reinforcing its military and diplomatic presence in the Arctic. Plans to bolster Canada's Arctic presence include deploying new patrol ships, destroyers, icebreakers, and submarines capable of operating under the ice cap, in addition to more planes and drones to monitor and defend the territory. A heist that could easily contend for the most sophisticated ever has taken the UK and the world by storm. Thieves in the UK stole a 98 kg gold toilet in just 5 minutes. The stunning revelation came up during hearing in the burglary case at the Oxford Crown Court. It all goes back to December 2019, when the £2.8 million gold toilet, a work of art by an Italian artist, was plumbed in as part of an art exhibition. A gang of 5 burglars reportedly broke through the palace's wooden gates in 2 vehicles and used sledgehammers to break in through a window. And they broke the wooden door to the cubicle where the toilet was plumbed, removed it, and drove away with the golden toilet. All in all, the burglars spent just 5 minutes to execute the heist. According to prosecutor Julian Christopher, burglars split the artwork into smaller amounts of gold, which are yet to be recovered. The gold toilet was insured for a whopping $6 million. Of the 5 accused, 4 have pleaded not guilty, and the details have emerged in the hearing at the Oxford Crown Court. The hearing started 5 years after the artwork was stolen. Every few months, there seems to be a new crisis in Pakistan cricket. The latest one has been triggered by the team's ouster from the Champions Trophy. Now, such has been the manner of their exit that it hasn't just prompted disappointment or anger, but brought out the entire spectrum of emotions from the Pakistani public, from the hopeless to the bizarre. Let's first tell you why exactly there is another crisis in Pakistan cricket. You see, the country waited 30 long years to host a global cricket tournament. Pakistan implemented sweeping security measures as it wanted to basically erase worries of instability, while also renovating its stadiums to meet the requirements for an international event. But it seems like they forgot one aspect of a cricket tournament, and that is cricket itself. 2 heavy defeats in the span of just a few days, meaning that 30 years of hopes and dreams have been shattered in less than a week. Such was the performance against India that some Pakistan cricket fans resorted to wearing the jerseys of the Indian cricket team.
Where was the hard work? They were fielding as if they were watching a show. They did not work hard. They had no skill. That is why I support India. Kohli had been out of form. We knew he would score a century against Pakistan because he is that sort of player.
There seems to be a sense of hopelessness in the Pakistani cricket community. Former Pakistan captain and cricket legend Wasim Akram, in fact, said during a broadcast that such has become the state of affairs of the team that he is not even disappointed by the performance. He has simply become used to it. And he wasn't the only one, by the way. Former Pakistan women's captain Sana Mir said that even if you put MS Dhoni in this team, it wouldn't make any difference because the team has not been selected on the basis of the conditions. There is a sense of resignation in these comments. These former Pakistan cricketers who made the country proud simply have no expectations, it seems, from the current team. Now, most of these comments make sense, but panelists on one Pakistani YouTube channel completely lost the plot. They blamed black magic for their team's loss. Can you believe that? A clip has gone viral on social media where one panelist said that the Indian team had 22 priests inside the Dubai International Stadium, 2 for each player, to perform dark magic on the Pakistani team. Can you believe that? Another panelist went on to confidently claim that it was due to this reason that the Indian team wanted the match to be held in Dubai, as the priests, or pundits as they are known in India, would not have been able to travel to Pakistan. Blaming black magic for the team's poor performance on the pitch? Now that certainly is absurd, also creative. And that's a word, absurd, that can be used to describe Pakistan cricket as of now itself. As the Trump administration prepares to release the Kennedy assassination files, a Secret Service agent named Clint Hill, who was famously photographed in 1963 throwing himself on top of President John F. Kennedy's limousine, passed away at 93 on 21st February. Hill had jumped onto JFK's uncovered limousine in Dallas in an attempt to shield JFK and his family from the fatal gunshots fired at them. Hill was honored for this bravery that day.